everyone needs to know what you're trying to achieve. So that's a market development strategy. What we're actually doing, if you're thinking about it, is we're increasing risk. Product development is existing markets, new products. For those people in the UK, you've now just, your jaws have probably hit the ground. In the middle of that box, let's just write SPAR. If you think about it, this is how Amazon built their business. Ansoff sits in here somewhere, and so does SPAR. Make sure it's the thing that everybody talks about at nearly every single meeting. A plan on a page. Well, it's exactly what it says on the tin, really. But why bother? And what does it look like, and who cares? Okay, great questions. But before I answer any of those, let's start today with another question. The question is, what sort of leader are you? Ready? Maybe you want to write down this list perhaps. Okay, so boss number 1 says, well, there's no actual goal as such, no real targets, no real plan. We do what we do as well as we can do it, and we cross our fingers and we say a prayer and we light a candle and we don't step on the cracks and we hope for the best. And if we grow, well done everyone for trying so hard. Of course, that's not you. Let's carry on with our list, shall we? Boss number 2 says, well, we do have a revenue and an overhead and a profit goal. And basically, it's last year's actuals plus some small market-driven accommodations. We formalize it and we take a look at it every month or so, quarterly at least. No, I know that's not you either. Boss number 3 says, everyone who is important enough contributes to formalizing and agreeing the goal, and we then all agree it, and then we share it, and we measure it, and we track it very often. And actually, I hope that's not you either. Now, boss number 4 says, look, everyone has a say in the goals, everyone knows the goals, and everyone, and I do mean everyone, sees how we're doing, and we share the top line goals and the targets and the results with everyone every month from the shop floor to the boardroom. Now, I'm hoping that that's you. But here's the trick. Everyone. No, hold on. I know what you're screaming at your screens. But Antonio, there's a lot of proprietary information and sensitive stuff in there, and we can't go showing that to everyone. Well, yeah, of course there is. So your job is to figure out what you can share to everyone. I think you can share what I'm about to share with you today. So strap yourself in. There's a lot of strategy in today, lots of good leadership stuff, so I hope you find it useful. And you'll find that when you approach budgeting and targeting and reporting in this way, in the way I'm going to show you today, I'm hoping it'll help you figure out how to not just grow, but grow fast, at scale, and finally stop managing and start leading. So welcome to Stop Managing and Start Leading. This is the podcast for leaders who need to stop managing and for managers who really want to start leading. I'm your host, Antonio Garrido, the founder and president of My Daily Leadership. I'm a serial entrepreneur, I'm a business founder, and I'm a leader just like you. I'm a 3 times author, and I have led businesses from ground level startups all the way to Fortune 60s with billions in revenue and thousands of employees. What if I told you that the secret to exceptional leadership is much easier and much closer than you think? Every leader and every manager has the potential to become exceptional. That's our goal. The kind of leader that they, their business, and their people deserve. And you're no exception. You simply need to discover the mindsets, the tools, and the competencies, and the habits to unlock all of those potentials. And that's where we come in. It's episode 8, so you really should have already, but if you haven't, go ahead and introduce yourself to our friend, the subscribe button. Subscribe to the My Daily Leadership YouTube channel today for actionable insights and practical tools in our podcast episodes every single week. And if you're one of those chaps listening on a podcast platform, please do cozy up and get to know the follow button. Both will help you to level up your leadership. So do it now. Okay, let's start with a story, a quick story. I once worked for a boss who had approved my annual budget, top to bottom, the revenues, the overheads, the phasing, the budgets, the capex, the lot, right? Soup to nuts. 2 months later, he was talking to one of my direct reports. And I don't know quite how, because I wasn't there, but the annual budget came up. And my boss asked this particular individual what she thought of this year's budget. And she said that she hadn't seen it. Why did she say that? Because she hadn't seen it. Now, she knew her part of it, of course, but not the whole thing. Not even really a summary of it, other than a scant few top-line numbers. So then my boss asked me why I hadn't shared it with her. Not even really a summary of it. And not only her, but to everyone on the team. Well, I thought it was too sensitive, I replied. And he said, hold on, Antonio. If you don't trust them, why did you hire them? And if you don't trust them, why should they trust you? And if they don't know what everyone's goal is, how can they help them achieve it? Okay, ouch. Well, there's not much left to say, I think. So let's get into our model and see whether we help you at all today. If you typically join us on YouTube, you'll know that we always introduce you to a critical leadership model or two by drawing them out. Now, we're visual learners here at My Daily Leadership. We're VLs. So if you're listening on a podcast platform, that's probably because you're much more of an auditory learner, what we call ALs. And that's great too, but if you want to see the content we're about to talk through drawn out in real time, please switch over to YouTube now, or you can do it later. Now, the models we draw in this episode and all future episodes, all episodes, are also going to be available as complimentary downloads on our website, and that's all the w's.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. So, shall we? Let's dive in. So here's today's question, because we always start with a question. The question is, how do I grow at scale? Not just grow a little bit, but grow a lot. And the answer, as you'll figure out, is to involve everybody in the planning process and involve everybody in the tracking process. And let's just figure out how to do that too. So we're going to start with today's model. So let's start by drawing one of our models here. Interestingly enough, somebody commented the other day and they said, were you an architect in a previous life? Because all your drawings are so good. Well, actually I was. So anyway, that's nice. So let's have a look down here and we'll say markets. Okay. And up here we'll say products. So I'm just really looking at a tool that we use when we're doing our strategic planning and then goes down into tactical planning and then what can we share with our people. So that's what we're going to start with, right? So the first thing we do before we can put together a plan is we have to think about, right? Have to think about the plan, where we're going and what we're doing and all of that kind of stuff. So we start by thinking about this. Any strategic plan starts by thinking about this. So we have existing, so that's existing markets, and then we have new. So are we going to do more stuff in existing markets or are we going to do some stuff in brand new markets? And then we've got products, so we've got existing products, and then we have new products. Okay, by the way, if you want to do any more reading around this, because some of our guys do, the thing to search, I guess, more than anything else, will be this chap here. Genius guy called Igor Ansoff. This is called the Ansoff matrix, right? We didn't invent this. I wish we did. But anyway, here we go. So thinking about what does our plan look like? What does our goal look like? And we're going to have a Dyson slice of this today in about 4 different ways. But here's the first model. So we have existing markets, new markets, existing products, new products. So anything that we do this year or next year or any year really has got to live on this model somewhere, because we're either doing existing products into existing markets or we're doing new products into existing markets. Or we're doing existing products into new markets, or we're doing new products into new markets, right? That's all it is. And when I say products, for those that are service only, it's the same, right? It could be existing service, new services, existing markets, new markets, right? So it works for products and services. I better put it there in case anybody wants to get super pedantic and write in. Okay, so let's think then existing products into existing markets. What do we call that? Well, so that we're all on the same page, we call that market penetration, right? In other words, we need a strategy to get our existing products further into our existing markets. That's a market penetration strategy. Okay, cool. Well, what about existing products into new markets? Well, that's called market development. I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute with a real life company, so you get the idea. So that's a market development strategy. What about new products and services into existing markets? Well, that's a product development strategy, right? Product or service development. So, new products into existing markets. Well, what about if we're talking about new products and services into brand new markets? Well, that's a diversification. That's a diversification strategy. So for those listening and not watching, we have here a 4-box model, existing and new markets on the bottom, running up existing and new products and services on the top, and then bottom left is market penetration, top left is product development, top right is diversification, bottom right is market development strategy. Okay, cool. Now think about this also. As we move up here, or I guess you could even argue, and I would be okay with that, as we move along here and we move up this axis here, what we're actually doing, if you're thinking about it, is we're increasing risk, right? So this is, if you like, the risk. I was going to say curve, but it's not a curve. So this is an increasing risk, this is risk here, and this is risk there. In other words, if we're going to do existing products and services into existing markets, the risk is fairly low, unless your market, the bottom's about to fall out and it goes into catastrophic terminal decline, which sometimes happens. Think about color TVs and what happened to the black and white TVs when that happened. But let's not get too theoretical at this point, right? But risk goes up. So we have to, as leaders, we have to balance what we do with risk. So if we move away from existing markets and existing products, then we are increasing risk. That's fairly obvious, right? Okay. Let me just number these for a second. So let's just call market penetration number 1. Let's call product development number 2. Let's call market development number 3, and let's call diversification number 4. So you get the idea, so I can just write them down here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So number 1, which is market penetration. That's existing sales of existing products in existing markets. Okay, how would we increase sales of existing products into existing markets? Well, really, it's through tactical activity. Okay. Tactical sales and marketing, and it might have something to do with price adjustments, it might have something to do with increasing the sales, right? So it's a very tactical thing. It's got something to do with price, it's got something to do with margin, and it's typically got something to do with sales effort and or skill. Okay, let's just leave it at that for now. Number 2 is product development. Well, that involves new products to existing markets. So the target, like number 1, is the existing customer base. So targets the existing customer base, but with new and or improved offerings. Fairly self-evident. Number 3, which is a market development, well, that really is about expanding the reach. of existing products into new markets. So that could be a geography, for example. In other words, you sell in one area and you don't sell in another area. So that could be geographically based. It could be by geography. It could be by region. It could be by demographic. It could be by segment. You get the idea, right? Okay. We won't go into too much detail today. And then number 4 is diversification. This is the red stuff, right? This is the risk stuff. So it's high risk, often high reward. So let's just put there high risk, often high reward. And also, if you think about it, probably high cost too, and probably long cycles involved. But you get the idea. It could be related, it could be unrelated, it could be brand stretch. I mean, there's a lot of thinking that goes into that. It's high risk and can be high reward and can be high cost, but again, can be high reward. We'll leave it at that. Okay, so Mr. Ansoff will tell you all about that if you're interested. Everything that we just talked about in our previous model, let's overlay that onto a brand that we're all quite familiar with. I'm hoping there's going to be a big surprise aha moment at the end of this. Well, we'll see anyway. So let's think about Coca-Cola. Why? Because everyone in the world knows who Coca-Cola is, right? So let's think about, we've got markets. We've got, if you remember, we have existing, and of course we have new, and then we have product, and then we have existing, and we have new. If Coca-Cola recognized that this is the way to think about our whole world, then, let's agree that maybe that's something that we could do too. Okay, so let's think about market penetration then. Where did market penetration live? Well, it lived in here in quadrant 1. Let me just put those numbers in again. Might help us going forward. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let me give you a couple of examples. So this is, let's say, so this is the market penetration piece, right? So let's go market penetration. Well, this really means increase marketing. So I'll give you a couple of examples on each of these. Increase marketing efforts into flagship products. Well, what are those? Well, think Coke, right? Just general Coca-Cola Classic or Coca-Cola Zero, right? Think of global campaigns like Taste the Feeling. If you remember that campaign, Taste the Feeling was this at work. So I'm just going to say Taste the Feeling so you know what I mean. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do that in terms of market penetration is, let's say, in discounts, really. Discounts and bundling. Discounts and bundling. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means offering kind of multi-pack deals, right? Multi-pack discounts or bundling, or even bundling Coca-Cola with other products in the supermarket, for example. So that might be lumping Coca-Cola, bundle it with some other snacks, or even some other beverages, or even beverages that they own that you didn't know, like Tango and stuff like that. And what they're actually trying to do is also increase loyalty. They're trying to increase frequency of purchase, all of that good stuff, right? Amongst existing customers. All right, so you get the idea. Let's have a look then at product development. Product development is existing markets, new products. Okay, so how would they do that? So this is maybe flavor variations. Okay, so that's new flavors. What might that be? Well, you might remember them. You might not like them all, but you remember cherry Coke, vanilla Coke, if you remember that. Orange vanilla, you get the idea, right? Cinnamon, York, orange vanilla, York. But okay, basically what they were trying to do is spark some kind of interest, new products, existing customer base. That's one. Another way, instead of just flavors, there was a Coke Energy. Does anybody remember Coke Energy? This was Coke with added vitamins. Nice. And extra caffeine. I mean, it's all the good stuff that everybody loves, right? So it's vitamins and caffeine. Basically, what they're trying to do is expand that, the brand reach of Coke to existing markets, but new products. So Coke Energy, I don't even know if it's still around, but it's with Coke with vitamins and caffeine. All right, that's fairly easy. What about market development? Well, so new markets, existing products. Well, that might be, as we said. So let's go market development. And there aren't many places in this world where Coca-Cola isn't recognized, but there are some places where it's not properly yet fully distributed, right? So maybe some underdeveloped regions, maybe in Africa or Asia, or some rural areas in some underdeveloped or some developing countries, right? So let's just put a channel, stretch, and regional strategy, right? So they're trying to get it into new locations, actually new areas where they're not. And then there could be a new demographic, right? So maybe Coca-Cola Life. Do you remember Coca-Cola Life? You might be thinking, he has an uncommon interest in Coca-Cola. Well, I have actually, because well, first of all, well, I don't know, you might be a Pepsi fan and you need to go and see the doctor. But Coca-Cola, you might like Coca-Cola or don't like Coca-Cola. I admire the way Coca-Cola does things, a bit like Mars. You might not be a fan of Mars or Coca-Cola, but they kind of figure stuff out, right? They do pretty well. And even if they make a mistake and get some of this wrong, they kind of flip pretty easily. I like the way that Coca-Cola has managed to be so successful, or as successful as it has been for so long, right? So I do admire the brand. I admire where the CEO said a few years ago, I can't remember how many years ago now, let's say 5 years ago, the CEO of Coca-Cola said the new vision for Coca-Cola, just get your heads around this for a second because it's genius, is to be within an arm's reach of desire. To be within an arm's reach of desire. That means if you want a Coca-Cola, you have to do no more than kind of stretch your arm out and get a Coke. So that means that they have lots of, they have plans and strategies for how do we get into more retail, how do we get into more clubs and bars, and they have segments that they really try to penetrate. So that's okay, and you're going to go, yes, well, everybody does that, right? I get that. But that, to be within an arm's reach of desire, actually says a lot of things about what the things that they're trying to do. There was a town, I don't want to say a village, a whole town that was built not long ago. I think it was in Atlanta. That kind of makes sense because Coca-Cola are in Atlanta. Anyway, there was a town that was built not that long ago. When as they were building the services that were coming in, gas, water, electric, standard stuff that comes into a house, they also had Coca-Cola plumbed into the house. So that when you turned on the tap, Coca-Cola came out of the tap or the faucet, right? And I don't mean it was kept in a barrel in the garage. I mean, it came through pipes underground and came out of your house. Now you might think, well, that's awful. You might think that's phenomenal. Don't know. But what you have to admire is when the CEO says we want to be within an arm's reach of desire, and that just means get up from your living room, walk into the lounge and turn on the tap and Coke comes out, or Diet Coke, or your particular flavour of Coke. I mean, you've got to admit that that's pretty good. If you're a dentist, I was going to say you might think that's terrible. You probably think it's brilliant. But anyway, there you go. Okay, so market development, new products into existing markets. Coca-Cola Life actually was more like uses only natural sweeteners and all that kind of stuff. They were trying to really make sure that it was all natural stuff and no artificial stuff. So let's just say natural stuff. I'll just say natural stuff. So far, nothing particularly remarkable, I think. Let's have a look at our higher risk, if you like, which is the diversification strategy. So what might that look like? Well, a diversification strategy might, for example, so this is new market, new product. So what might that look like? Well, maybe they could, for example, purchase an organization like Costa Coffee. For anybody that's in the UK, you will all know what Costa Coffee is because it's kind of like the British equivalent of Starbucks. Now, I know we have Starbucks in the UK, but Costa Coffee's all over the UK, right? Thousands of coffee stores like Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola happened to, for example, buy Costa Coffee, it would give them access to completely new markets, coffee shops, retail coffee, new product category, hot beverages. They've never done that before. And they can also, as a diversification, for example, get into investing in brands like Innocent. Innocent plant-based smoothies and all of that kind of stuff, right? So here's the shocker, perhaps. If I were to ask you if you're British, well, who owns Costa Coffee, do you think? Coca-Cola own Costa Coffee. And for those people in the UK, you've now just, your jaws have probably hit the ground. They bought them in 2018, 2018, for 5 billion, 5.1 billion US, 5.1 billion. So they bought them from Whitbread, who are a PLC, public traded company in the UK, who do pubs and clubs and beer in the main. But so Coca-Cola owns Costa Coffee, which is a bit of a surprise. But it was actually, the deal was finalized in 2019. But it makes the point. The point is that new markets, new products, and sometimes they keep those things quiet for obvious reasons. So if there is anyone in the UK watching today's episode, I imagine you're quite surprised to learn that Coca-Cola own Costa Coffee. Not that that's a bad thing, I'm just saying they kept it quiet and innocent and so on. Okay, well, hopefully that made sense, and you now get this idea about existing products, existing markets, new markets. So let's now think about another model, and then we're going to bring all three models together. Okay, so now let's have a look at a new model. Looks very similar, right? Because it's another 4-box model. We talked about 4-box model, or BCG, Boston Consulting Group, 4-box matrix. But anyway, we have a new model to think about. So we've got all of that, diversification, development, market penetration. We've got all of that model in our head. Now think about this, because we want to overlay that with this onto one model. Okay, so we're getting there. 5 minutes and we'll be there. Well, maybe 10. Let's think about this. Draw yourself a box, and in the middle of that box, let's just write SPAR. Is a good way to remember this. What does SPAR mean? Well, S means safeguard and sustain. So if we think about what have we got to do next year, right? Or what are our goals? What is our target? What does our business plan look like next year? As well as that Ansoff's matrix that we talked about, also think about this. There are some accounts, key accounts probably, our few most important accounts that come hell or high water, come what may, we have to keep those accounts because they are strategic accounts that we need to safeguard, we need to sustain, we need to keep those accounts. And we call those safeguard accounts or sustain accounts, right? If you think about it this way, your key clients, your most important customer, your biggest client are probably somebody else's biggest prospect. That's a sobering thought, right? So there are some accounts that we absolutely have to keep. Think about that in terms of, a Pareto 80-20. Think about it in that way. That probably 80% of your value probably comes from 20% of your accounts. So 80% of value, 20% of the accounts by number, those are the key accounts that you need to keep. You need to sustain them. You need to safeguard them, right? You've got to make sure that nobody comes and poaches them. And so you need a plan. Do we just cross our fingers and light a candle and say a prayer and hope that they stay with us? Because normally when our largest accounts go, we kind of often find out how. Normally when they've gone. They normally vote with their feet. They're dissatisfied. They start to look around quietly. They find somebody else. They give them a go. And before you know, they've left us. And once they've gone, it's impossible to get them back. Well, it's not impossible, but it takes some time, right? It takes time to get them back. So how about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? How about we deal with that as early as possible, right? So we need a plan. Let's say we have, let's say there are 10 accounts in here. And that means we need 10 plans. A plan for each that talks about, frequency of contact, how we're going to contact, what level do we contact, all of that good stuff, right? We'll talk about this model in some more detail in about 4 or 5 episodes time. So if you want to do a deep dive into this model, you're going to have to stay with us. You're going to have to subscribe. You're going to have to follow and all of that, comment and all that kind of good stuff, right? So we will do a deeper dive into this pretty soon. So you need to make sure that you safeguard those key accounts. But there are some accounts that we don't have. So we have to go and prospect. We have to go and pursue them. We need a pursue strategy. Pursue, right? So there are some accounts and we need to know what accounts they are, right? We need a list of those things. So we need to figure out how, who, and when, right? How, who, when. I'm assuming if they're on that list, then we know the why, right? So we need to figure out, we need a plan to actually prosper, pursue. Somebody might even say plunder. Am I right with plunder? That's a good word, right? So how do we go get those? There are some accounts that they buy some products and services from us, right? A limited number perhaps and a limited depth. And what we need to do is we need to amplify those accounts. Amplify those accounts. You might even say augment those accounts. What does that look like? Well, basically that means increase the depth and breadth of the products and services that they buy. So they buy these things from you, but they don't buy these things from you. Sometimes they buy these things, but not those things. And as I said, we'll go into this in some detail in a few weeks. If you think about it, this is how Amazon built their business. How? Well, if anybody that's watching has ever bought anything from Amazon, every time you buy something from Amazon, let's say, for example, you bought this pen, and I don't know if you can, but if you buy this fountain pen off Amazon and you click buy, they're likely as not to say, well, hey, Antonio, people that normally buy this pen also buy this ink, and they also buy these pencils, and they also buy this cat mat, or whatever it is. Is there such thing as a cat mat? I don't know. But you get the idea. All they're doing is this. They're trying to increase the depth in the basket and products, and we'll go over it in a few weeks. And then the last one is the recover and reacquire. What does that mean? Well, that means that there are some accounts that you used to have and they now no longer do buy from you. What would you do about that? Well, why don't you have a plan, right, for that? Why don't you have a plan to go get them back, or at least go try? The reason that they left you may be lost in the annals of history. Maybe the buyer that was buying from you now no longer is. Maybe the reason is long forgotten. Maybe who they replaced you with, they're unhappy with right now. Who knows? So again, you need a list. Right, just like before, you need a list there, you need a list here, you need a list here, and you need to divvy out this list and make sure everybody's, following the activities required to go get these things. So in terms of those recover accounts, you set the limit. You say if someone hasn't bought from us for 6 months, or 6 days, or 6 weeks, or 6 years, or as soon as somebody hits $100,000 or less, then they're probably leaving us, or they used to be 500,000 and now they're only 5,000. They're only buying the stuff that they absolutely can't get anywhere else. You get the idea, right? You set those limits and go get them back. Go reacquire those accounts, or at least go try and have a plan for doing that. Anyway, as I mentioned, we will come back to this particular plan in about 4 or 5 episodes time. So now let's look at it this way. We now have 2 models. We have this model here, which is more than anything else a time, territory, and account plan for the sales and marketing function, perhaps. And then we also have this here, which is Ansoff's matrix, which talks about existing and new products in existing and new markets. Well, we could easily put these 2 plans together into one plan. The one plan I want to talk about is what we call plan on the page, which is how we started this episode probably about an hour ago, right? A plan on a page where everybody can see everything that we're trying to do in one place and track it in one place and report in one place and highlight, the wins and losses in one place. So we're going to just take a break for a second. So we've reached what you might call our intermission. So well done for staying with us for this far. So in this break, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our book. You can probably see one of them behind me somewhere, right? Which is called My Daily Leadership. And it's a powerful roadmap for business success. In the last episode, which was, I think pretty good episode about coaching. If you haven't seen it, check it out, by the way. I did mention some of the wonderful leadership books covered in our book, including, or certainly the leadership topics covered in our book, like emotional intelligence, EQ, which is much more important than IQ. And if you read the book, you find out why. The leader's most important principle, which is action bias, which is, make an imperfect start and course correct along the way. We talked about self-awareness and how people don't typically help you build that yourself. You have to build that yourself. We talked about how do you run a business in an insightful way, right? So we start thinking about hindsight to develop situational insight, and then foresight and resight. We talk about that in the book. Then we talk about the thing that we all have and we don't know how to deal with because we can't see them, blind spots, right? We talk about developing trust. We talk about self-limiting beliefs, all of those good leadership things in the book. What I failed to mention is one of the more unique aspects of the book, one that sets it apart from all other leadership books, which is that there are also in the book some guided journal prompts for leaders. So throughout the book, we will get you to think about and to complete some leadership prompts designed to help you build all of those things that I just talked about. Plus, at the end of that book, there are 31 days worth of powerful daily guided leadership journal prompts to get you into the groove, right? If you can do a month, you can do for the rest of your life, right? Now, you might be sitting there thinking, what, me journaling? I should, Coco. You must be having a laugh. I'm far too busy for all of that nonsense. Then you probably more than ever need to grab a copy of the book, because if you can't have 5 minutes to look after you and your people and the future of the rest of your life, but every day, but you have 5 minutes for your teeth and not for them, then you got bigger problems. So if we say, as we say in the book, if any leader tells you that they are serious about developing themselves and their team and their people and their company, but they don't journal, here's the thing: don't believe them, because it's not true. Okay, mic drop. And My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success, is available on Amazon or wherever you get your audiobooks. And it's me that has narrated it. So please do check it out. And before this break ends, don't forget to pause me, share your thoughts, questions, comments, any aha moments from what we've covered so far. Very, very welcome. Okay, break's over. Back to it. You're probably familiar with this, or at least what it's called. Some people call it a waterfall. Some people call it a waterfall model. Some people call it a bridge, and some people call it a waterfall bridge. So I'm not entirely sure what to call it, but we just call it plan on a page. But let's think about it this way. Along the y-axis, let's just put revenue for the sake of argument. And then across the bottom here, we're not going to put time. What we're actually going to do is we're going to put projects more than anything else. So let's pretend, so this isn't to scale, and that's okay. And for those that aren't watching this, I can only recommend that you do, because I don't even know how I'm going to describe it. So what you could do, of course, is just go onto our website, which I mentioned earlier, and download the model. Maybe it'll all become very self-evident. I don't know. Let's imagine that you ended last year at $1 million revenue, just for the sake of a number. Okay, I hope it was more. So let's imagine you finished the year at $1 million, and it's the 31st of December and you just finished. Well, on the 1st of January, right, everything gets reset. As Alice in our organization says, you don't start from scratch, you start from experience, which I really like. But basically, the clock goes back to zero. The mileometer goes back to zero. We start on January the 1st with zero, right? Assuming that you were running a calendar year, but just go with the analogy. Okay. So if you ended last year on $1 million, let's not imagine that the start of this year starts at $1 million, because that's not the case. Because next year, the year that's just about to start, there will be maybe some market consolidation. Maybe there will be some competitive response. Maybe you'll lose some market share. Typically, if we ended the year at 1 million, we don't start at 1 million. Normally we go back, right? Normally, and depending on the market, for some people that's very little, and for some people it's as much as 14%. So we're actually going to imagine that we're starting not from 1 million, right? Let's say this goes from 1 million to 1.5 million, right? But actually maybe 800,000. So we start lower than we finished. So we have to figure out a plan to get us back up to 1 million. Then we're going to have to figure out, well, something that we're going to do that's going to increase. We're going to call that B for the sake of argument. And then we're also going to do a little bit of this over here. We'll call that C. We're actually going to do something over here, which we're going to call D, which is actually going to lose us. We're going to take us backwards, maybe in terms of revenue or margin or whatever. But then we're going to do this big thing over here, which we're going to call E. And then we're going to do a little bit of this over here, which we're going to call F. And then the last thing we're going to do to take us up to 1.5 and 1.4 is G. In other words, we recognize that a bit of this is going to happen, a bit of A is going to happen. We have to do a bit of B. We're going to do a bit of C, and the value of that, so B is worth something like 50,000, 50K. C is worth about 30K. D is probably going to minus us 5K. E is about 60K. F is about 30K, and G is about 40K. You get the idea. Each of these has a value, has a worth. Now, each of these things, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, each of these, let me put them here, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, each of these requires a plan, obviously. So what does the plan for A look like? What does the plan for B look like? You get the idea all the way down. There has to be a plan. And a plan is somebody has to do some stuff, right? There needs to be a plan for each of these things. So it's everything that we did last year plus these things here, which is going to detail how do we go from 1 million to 1.5 million or 1.8 million or whatever the plan is. And if you think about it, and I'm sure you're already way ahead of me, each of these things has got something to do with Ansoff, because Ansoff sits in here somewhere, and so does SPAR, right? That we just talked about a second ago. So each of these has an Ansoff and a SPAR consideration. So now we have one piece of paper that says to everyone, hey, this year we did 1 million, and we're going to do 1.5, and here's how we're going to do it. This is what it looks like. Now, this one plan on a page doesn't have to give all of the details of these individual plans. So each of those individual plans are probably goes into enormous details somewhere that whoever owns those plans, whoever perhaps is the executive leader of those plans, has the granular detail. Do you have to share the granular detail? No, you don't. But this, I used to have another boss that said that an idiot at speed should be able to understand it. Not that we employed any idiots, right? But somebody who's not very bright and in a rush, right, in a hurry, can understand it, can see it. A picture, if you can represent anything graphically, please do, because you can say in this one picture so much that it will take you 20 pages of, close line script, right? and detailed analysis. Basically, it all boils down to this. So figure a way of graphically representing this and everything else that you can, so that everybody can understand everything that they need to know. Now, what this doesn't talk about, obviously, it doesn't talk about timing, right? Because you might only be doing E in Q3. This could be a Q3 issue. This could be a Q1 to 4 issue. This could be a Q1 to 4 issue, right? But E is only Q3. So in January, where you say this is the plan, and in February, it looks like we haven't made much progress. And that's okay. Just got to make it clear about maybe this is Q1 plan on a page. Maybe there's a Q2 plan on the page. You get the idea, right? Q3 and Q4. So you can show that this is the plan, you can show who owns the plan, you can show which part, what you're trying to achieve with that plan, and you can make sure everybody sees it. It's so powerful when you put league tables up, right? So if this was 60K and it was equally spread, probably isn't, because that E doesn't grow like that, but it doesn't go like that. It, in other words, flat line, so it's 60 divided by 4, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. It's probably on a growing basis such that by the time you get to the end of it, the area underneath the line is 60K. You can show it in a green if you're on target. You could show E in an amber if you're close, and you can show it red if you're behind. So you can also color code this. You can what we call rag it, which I think IBM invented, and it just means red, amber, green. So you can show these things if we're on track or we're behind track, depending on where we should be at any particular point at a time. So that's great. That's all I wanted to really highlight. Everyone in the business, I mean everyone in the business, should be able to at least see something that looks like this. That looks like, here's our plan on a page for the year. And I don't care how complicated you are, even Coca-Cola do this, right? Most organizations do this. Okay, cool. So that's what I think I wanted to say today. I hope that made sense. So do try to do this. Do try to figure out how to share something like this with everyone, because everyone needs to know what you're trying to achieve, why, where, how, and all of that. And when everyone knows what the plan looks like and why, and then you tell them how they can contribute to it, they'll all commit to it. Not just the boardroom, not just the senior managers, absolutely everyone. You get the idea. A plan on a page. So you are that leader for that we talked about earlier. Not just that we hope and light a candle and say a prayer, but actually figure it all out, use Ansoff, use the SPAR method that we just talked about, stick it all on a waterfall or a bridge or whatever you want to call that, right? And share it with everyone and explain it to everyone and make sure everyone knows how they're tracking it. Rag it, red, amber, green, and make sure it's the thing that everybody talks about at nearly every single meeting. Why? Because this creates collaborative teams, and that's absolutely critical if you're going to be a tremendous leader. Einstein said that if you can't describe it on one piece of paper, you don't understand it well enough. And if you don't understand it, how can you possibly hope to deliver it? I said that last bit, not Einstein, but you get the drift, I hope. Anyway, well, I think that's more than enough for today. Thanks once again for tuning in to Stop Managing and Start Leading and My Daily Leadership podcast. And look, whatever your reason for listening or watching, tuning in today, I do hope that this episode offered you something of value, even if it's just one tool, one tip that maybe improves your leadership ability just by 1%. Remember, there's an immense power in marginal gains consistently repeated over time. And there's also power in community. So please do share your questions, share your insights and topics. Get everybody you know tuning in, right? Tell us your suggestions in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, of course. And whilst you're down there, give us a like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. And for our auditory learners, our ALs, again, you're only getting half the story. So head over to our YouTube channel where today's episode really comes to life, I hope, with visual models, notes and drawings. And I apologize again for my writing. All models are available as complimentary downloads, all the www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. And in the next episode, which I know you can't wait for, we'll be diving much deeper into the topic of people-focused and proactive leadership. We talked about that a few episodes ago. How deep are we going? Deeper than whale poo. Too far? I don't know. I'm Antonio Garrido with My Daily Leadership. Thanks for being here. Until next time, by wisdom and effort, see you soon.